The morning sun had just begun to rise over New York International Airport. Hundreds of passengers walked through the arrival terminal, each carrying their own dreams, worries, and stories. Some families laughed as they reunited. Others stood quietly, waiting for loved ones they had not seen in years. Among those passengers was a man no one noticed. His name was Daniel Carter. He wore a simple gray jacket that had clearly seen better days. In one hand, he pulled an old suitcase covered with travel stickers from France. In the other, he gently held the hand of his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. To everyone around them, Daniel looked like an ordinary single father returning home after months abroad. But hidden inside that worn suitcase was a secret that could change several powerful lives forever. Daniel looked down at Lily and smiled. "Are you tired, sweetheart?" Lily nodded with a sleepy smile. "A little, but I'm happy we're finally home." Daniel squeezed her hand. "So am I." Neither of them knew that within the next few minutes, their lives would never be the same again. Outside the airport entrance, expensive black luxury cars lined the curb. Television cameras stood ready. Reporters whispered excitedly into their microphones. Security guards hurried back and forth as if someone very important was about to arrive. One reporter looked toward the main entrance. "Is the CEO really coming here herself?" Another nodded. "That's what we've been told. She canceled a board meeting worth hundreds of millions of dollars." Everyone exchanged confused looks. Why would the CEO of one of the country's largest companies leave such an important meeting just to come to an airport? No one had an answer. Meanwhile, Daniel quietly pushed his luggage toward the exit, trying to avoid the crowd. He had no interest in celebrities or billionaires. His only goal was to take Lily home and begin a new life. France had given them hope, but it had also taken almost everything they had. Months earlier, Daniel had sold nearly all of his belongings just to afford the trip. Friends thought he was making the biggest mistake of his life. "You'll come back with nothing," they warned. But Daniel had smiled. "Sometimes the greatest risk is the only path left." Those words stayed with him every single day. As Daniel reached the airport doors, the crowd suddenly became strangely quiet. The sound of dozens of expensive cars stopping echoed across the terminal. Everyone turned. A sleek black limousine pulled up. Security officers rushed into position. The rear door slowly opened. Out stepped Sophia Bennett, the billionaire CEO of Bennett Global Industries. She was famous across the world. Business magazines called her the Iron Queen. Television hosts described her as brilliant, fearless, and impossible to impress. She rarely smiled. She never attended public events without months of planning. And according to the media, she trusted almost no one. Yet the moment Sophia stepped onto the sidewalk, something unbelievable happened. She ignored every reporter. She walked past every executive waiting to greet her. She didn't even acknowledge the cameras flashing in her face. Instead, her eyes searched desperately through the crowd, almost as if she had been waiting for one specific person. Then, she saw him, Daniel. For a brief second, Sophia froze. Her eyes filled with tears. Her hands trembled. The confident billionaire who had negotiated billion-dollar deals without blinking suddenly looked like someone fighting to hold back years of emotion. One security guard stepped forward. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" She didn't answer. Without saying a single word, Sophia started running. Reporters gasped. Employees stared. Security officers looked completely confused. The CEO is running. Who is she going to? Nobody could believe what they were seeing. Daniel looked up, surprised. He recognized the woman from television immediately. But before he could react, Sophia reached him. She stopped only inches away. For a second, neither of them spoke. The entire airport seemed to hold its breath. Then, with tears streaming down her face, Sophia threw her arms around Daniel and hugged him tightly in front of everyone. The crowd exploded with shock. Cameras flashed non-stop. People pulled out their phones. No one could understand why one of the richest women in America was embracing a humble single father who had just returned from France. Daniel whispered softly, "Sophia, after all these years." She closed her eyes. "I thought I'd never see you again." Neither of them realized that someone standing only a few feet away had secretly recorded everything. Within minutes, the video would spread across the internet, and millions of people would begin asking the same question. Who was this ordinary single dad? And why had the billionaire CEO broken every rule just to hold him in her arms? The moment Sophia wrapped her arms around Daniel, the entire airport fell silent. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. Within seconds, hundreds of phones were recording. Reporters rushed closer, shouting questions from every direction. Ms. Bennett, who is this man? Are you two related? Is he your husband? Why are you hugging an ordinary traveler? The cameras flashed non-stop. Sophia slowly stepped back, wiping the tears from her eyes. For a brief moment, she looked directly into Daniel's face. I've been waiting for this day for 5 years, she whispered. Daniel smiled gently. I promised I would come back. Lily looked up at both of them with confusion. Daddy, who is she? Daniel knelt beside his daughter. This is someone who once changed our lives. Sophia bent down and smiled warmly at Lily. So this is Lily. I've seen your pictures many times. Lily blinked in surprise. You know me? Sophia nodded, her eyes filling with emotion again. I've known about you since the day you were born. The reporters exchanged shocked looks. Now everyone wanted answers. Meanwhile, inside Bennett Global headquarters, the board members watched the live news on a giant television screen. One executive slammed his hand on the conference table. This is a disaster. Another shook his head. Our company's stock could collapse if rumors start spreading. But the oldest director quietly smiled. You don't understand. I've waited years to see this reunion. Everyone turned toward him. What do you mean? The old director took a deep breath. 5 years ago, our company was about to disappear. No investors. No hope. We were drowning in debt. Then one man appeared. The room became silent. That man was Daniel Carter. Back at the airport, Daniel and Sophia walked toward a quiet VIP lounge to escape the growing crowd. Security closed the doors behind them. For the first time in years, they were finally alone. Sophia looked at him. You look different. Daniel laughed softly. So do you. I have a few more gray hairs. Sophia smiled. And I have a few more responsibilities. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Sophia asked the question she had carried in her heart for years. Why did you disappear without saying goodbye? Daniel looked down at his hands. It wasn't because I wanted to. It was because I had no choice. He slowly opened his old suitcase. Inside were neatly organized documents, a small wooden box, and several faded photographs. Sophia immediately recognized the box. Her hands began to shake. No, it can't be. Daniel carefully lifted it out. I protected it, just like I promised. Sophia covered her mouth as tears rolled down her cheeks. 5 years earlier, when Bennett Global was on the edge of bankruptcy, someone had stolen confidential research worth billions of dollars. The company believed everything had been lost forever. Only Daniel knew the truth. He had secretly rescued the original documents before the thieves could destroy them. But revealing himself would have placed Lily in terrible danger. So instead, he disappeared. He left the country. He sacrificed his own reputation. And everyone believed he had abandoned them. Sophia looked at him with tears in her eyes. You carried this secret alone all these years? Daniel nodded. I couldn't risk anyone finding Lily. Sophia whispered, you protected my company. And you protected me. Daniel smiled quietly. It was the right thing to do. Just then, a loud knock echoed across the VIP lounge door. One of Sophia's security officers rushed inside. Ma'am, we have a serious problem. Sophia stood immediately. What happened? The guard handed her a tablet. Someone had uploaded the airport reunion video. In less than 30 minutes. It had already been viewed more than 20 million times. News channels across the country were broadcasting only one story. Who is Daniel Carter? Asterisk. But none of them knew the truth. And they had no idea that the people who had stolen those billion-dollar secrets 5 years earlier had just discovered that Daniel was back. Far away, inside a luxurious mansion, a powerful businessman watched the news with an angry expression. He slowly stood from his chair. So, Daniel Carter is alive. He turned toward his bodyguard. Gather everyone. This time, He doesn't leave the country. He doesn't leave alive. Daniel had finally come home. But without realizing it, he had also walked straight back into the most dangerous chapter of his life. The black SUVs stopped outside Bennett Global headquarters. Within seconds, armed security officers surrounded the entire building. Inside the executive office, Sophia looked out the window. She knew exactly who had come. Daniel quietly stood beside her. I never wanted you to be dragged into this again. Sophia turned toward him. You protected my future once. Now it's my turn to protect yours. Downstairs, dozens of reporters continued broadcasting live. No one realized that the biggest story wasn't the airport reunion. It was the secret hidden inside Daniel's old suitcase. Minutes later, the board of directors gathered in the company's main conference hall. Every seat was filled. Lawyers, government investigators, financial regulators, senior executives, even international media had arrived. Sophia walked onto the stage. Daniel followed quietly, still holding the small wooden box. The room became completely silent. Sophia spoke first. For 5 years, the world believed Daniel Carter abandoned this company. Today, everyone will finally learn the truth. Daniel slowly opened the wooden box. Inside were the original research files, signed contracts, security recordings, and encrypted storage devices that had disappeared years earlier. Government investigators carefully examined every document. One investigator looked up in disbelief. These are the original files. They were never destroyed. Another officer inserted one of the storage devices into a secure computer. Within moments, security footage appeared on the giant screen. The entire room watched in shock. The recordings clearly showed the real mastermind stealing company secrets and ordering innocent employees to take the blame. Gasps filled the hall. Several executives lowered their heads. Others couldn't believe what they were seeing. Then the doors suddenly burst open. The powerful businessman responsible for everything stormed inside with his lawyers. This is fake, he shouted. You can't prove anything. Before anyone could answer, the lead investigator calmly smiled. We already have. He placed a pair of handcuffs on the table. We've matched fingerprints. We've recovered financial records. And we have your voice on multiple recordings. The man's face turned pale. For the first time in years, he had nowhere left to hide. Security officers stepped forward. You are under arrest. As cameras flashed across the room, the man who had spent years controlling powerful people was finally led away in handcuffs. The audience erupted into applause. Sophia turned toward Daniel. Her voice trembled. You lost your career. You lost your home. You raised Lily alone. And you carried all of this without asking for recognition. Daniel smiled softly. I didn't do it for awards. I did it so my daughter could grow up knowing that doing the right thing always matters. Lily ran across the stage and hugged her father tightly. I'm proud of you, Daddy. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even reporters stopped asking questions. They simply watched the family standing together. A week later, Bennett Global held a special ceremony. In front of thousands of employees, Sophia announced the company's highest honor. This award has never been given before. It belongs to one man, Daniel Carter. The crowd rose to its feet. The applause lasted for several minutes. But Sophia wasn't finished. She smiled at Daniel. I also have one more announcement. She reached into her pocket and handed Daniel a small velvet box. The room fell silent once again. Daniel opened it. Inside was a simple ring. Sophia looked into his eyes. 5 years ago, you promised you'd come back. You kept your promise. Now, I have a question. Will you stay this time? Daniel looked at Lily. The little girl smiled brightly. I think Mom has been waiting long enough. The audience laughed through their tears. Daniel gently took Sophia's hand. There is nowhere else I'd rather be. The room exploded with applause. Months later, life looked completely different. Daniel became director of the company's charitable foundation, helping struggling single parents build better futures. Sophia continued leading the business, but she was no longer carrying every burden alone. Lily finally had the happy family she had always dreamed of. Sometimes the greatest heroes aren't the richest people in the room. They are the ones who quietly sacrifice everything for the people they love. And sometimes, The most unforgettable reunion begins with a simple hug that the whole world gets to witness. The end.